President Hollande has confirmed that French troops are taking part in operations against Islamists in northern Mali to halt rebel advances. The UN had called for a swift deployment of international troops following large-scale clashes in a key central town. Well, with us now is Jeff Steinberg, senior editor of Executive Intelligence Review. Thanks for joining us here on RT today. Well, Mali has sought out French assistance as the country's former colonial power. Is it a colonial throwback, do you think, or does France have other interests?
Well, there's definitely an element of falling back on an old colonial controller. Mali was given its independence in 1960, but is still part of the Francophone region of Africa. But I think the more fundamental point is that this is really a case of that old saying, the chicken's coming home to roost, because the rebel operations in northern Mali have existed for quite some time, but it was only in the aftermath of the overthrow of the Gaddafi government in Libya, which was promoted by France, Britain, and the United States in particular, really double-crossing China and Russia at the UN Security Council for regime change. It was only after that that you had a massive flow of weapons out of Libya into the hands of the rebels, which basically took a low-intensity conflict and threw it into a much greater crisis, where the rebels outgunned the Malian army. And so suddenly, as the result of one badly flawed regime change policy in Libya, we have instability spreading to many parts of the African continent and beyond. So it's a kind of a supreme irony that the French are being asked to come in and clean up a mess that they themselves helped create by the actions in 2011 in Libya.
Okay, and in a wider sense, François Hollande has succeeded Nicolas Sarkozy, as we know, in France. The platforms of the two leaders are different, but there seems to be a continuity in what you could call aggressive foreign policy. Why so?
Well, I just think that you have a kind of a NATO-wide, but really Britain, France, U.S. anchored policy, very often Germany sort of going along somewhat begrudgingly, of a very aggressive reconfiguration of NATO for an out-of-area deployment. There is a doctrine underlying this policy which is variously called humanitarian interventionism, R2P, responsibility to protect, and much of it goes all the way back to a speech Tony Blair gave in Chicago in 1999 during the Kosovo War, which basically says that the Western countries can intervene.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt. We'll have to leave it there. We're out of time, but we're very grateful for that. Thank you, Jeff Steinberg, senior editor of Executive Intelligence Review, with those thoughts today on RT. Thank you.
My pleasure.